right. Hi, Sandra. Hi, Kathleen.
What is up, ladies?
Here we are, mom proof. Remember the art of being comfortable with being uncomfortable, which brings us to lots of different spaces. And we have an amazing guest today, Susan Caso, LPC, MA. She's written a
Sister
very cool
therapist.
book.
Yes.
Yes. Susan, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. We've been excited about talking to you about this book. There's been a little chatter behind the scenes here with us, and we liked it. There may have been a glass of wine involved, but really great information.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think we talk about a lot of different books in this line of work, right? How to parent, what can we do? I felt like this one was different. And by the way, the cover is really pretty.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say I do like the cover. I'm one of those cover.
Yeah, the cover draws you into a book, you know? So, yeah.
It does. But really, it felt like more than a handbook. And it's called The Parent-Teen Connection, How to Build Lifelong Family Relationships, which, gosh, parenting never ends, does it?
It never ends. I have a 26, almost 22, and an 11-year-old. And so it never ends.
Oh,
That's
I'm
a big
so happy I
span.
don't have the young ones at home. You're just not going to get a break for a little while. You know that.
I know that. But it really gives me a good view of what's happening for teenagers right now. It's very different than when my 26-year-old was 11. You know, just talking about my 11-year-old now, it's really different.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
I know, exactly.
You're a practicing therapist. You do this for a living. But writing a book and taking everything that you've seen and heard over the years, I have a 36-year-old, and my youngest is 20. Your youngest is 11. Your youngest is 18.
He just turned 18.
I know. Gosh. Things are so different. Talk to us about why you wrote this book.
Well, I wrote the book because I wanted to help create stronger families where there's a deep sense of belonging, healthy communication, and an emotional closeness between parent and teen. And that's really what safeguards kids in today's world. And I use the word connectedness, and that is that feeling behind a secure attachment where you feel valued, accepted. There's an internal warmth that drives that relationship, and there's a safe and reassuring responsiveness in the relationship. And studies show, and I'm sure you guys are aware, that connectedness with at least one parent results in fewer emotional problems, fewer suicide attempts, less conduct disorder, lower symptoms of depression and anxiety, less substance abuse, less violence. And so I don't think that we talk about that word enough. And so that's kind of the overall theme in the book of how to create that with your child.
That's so interesting. As a sister therapist, it is something I've noticed. The way young adults want to have connection, and it seems to be something that isn't coming as easily, perhaps not as available. Can you say more about what your thoughts are? You know, we talked about, you just said it, the difference between you parenting your 26-year-old and then this 11-year-old. What's changed, and how come being connected seems like such a far-off reaching goal in some cases?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, for the first part of what you said I wanna comment on is that kids really do want an emotional closeness with their parent. And I think parents sometimes are surprised to hear that. And maybe that's because, I mean, I know my generation, I'm over 50, how I was parented was very different. It was more parent by fear, right?
Yep.
Parent with fear, excuse me.
Yes. Yes.
Same difference.
Yeah. Fear.
I mean, our parents didn't know what they were doing.
They didn't.
Were they scared, though? I don't think they were scared.
They did the best they could, though. Not to save
That's
them,
good
but
enough.
yeah.
Yeah, they did the best they could. I mean, I don't remember talking to my parents about how I was feeling or really reaching out to them when I was so confused about what I was doing. I felt like I was kind of lost.
Well, they kept harping on, like, your parents aren't your friends, right?
Right.
That's one thing I think that's really changed.
Good point.
Yeah. I think our kids really do want that closeness with us, and they want to be able to talk to us. And so I think there's a little bit of a disconnect because the parents that were raised by parent by fear and not talking about their feelings don't really maybe do that or know how to do that or feel comfortable doing that.
Mhm.
And so the kids sometimes are more emotionally aware or more comfortable talking about their feelings than their parent. And so there's that gap that
Mhm.
happens. So the kids are like, well, where do I go with this?
That's so interesting, the gap.
The gap. So there we
Yeah.
are. We're
Yeah.
parents that are still learning. We're
Yes.
trying to bridge that gap with
Yes.
kids to be able to talk to us. So as we get tips to pull
Mhm.
them out, I think parents are growing at the same rate emotionally sometimes, not all the time, that our kids are, right? I
Yep.
mean, I've certainly learned a lot.
We could learn so much more, and not that social media, or I don't even say that, just being having the access to the computer and knowing how to look up how to be a better parent. How do I connect with my kid? I think there are parents that seek that out, reading books. But I guess a question I have is, in your practice or at your own with your children, what have you found are some of the highlights that help make that connection feel authentic and like worthy, that the kid's like, okay, I'll bite, I'll go ahead and enter into this relationship in a deeper level.
Yeah, so in the book, I talk about the mom dad role versus the parent role.
Oh, I was excited
Bingo.
for you to talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. We just talked about that on the way up here. Yeah.
Okay. So I've been asking this question for years. I say, what percent of interaction do you perceive as positive with
Who are
your
you
parent?
asking it to? To the kid.
The kids.
Okay.
I'll ask the teenagers that question. And I do that so I can I can jump into their emotional experience super quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so most say around 30%.
Oh.
And so I know it's sad. And so when I ask, and not all teens, but most of them, and then when I ask, well, what makes up that 30% that you perceive as positive? They'll say things like, we cooked together, we, rode bikes, we went skiing, we listened to music, we cooked, all of those really things that you're, experiencing joy together.
Mm.
And you're really cultivating the relationship with your teenager when you're doing, time and joy together.
Yes.
So so
Yes.
then I asked them, "What makes up the 70% that you perceive as negative?" And basically, they say all the interactions that start with, "Have you? When are you going to?" You know, those type of interactions, and that's what I term the
Mhm.
parent role.
Mhm.
And, of course, we have to do those things as parents. We have to make sure our kids are on track, they're doing their chores, their homework, because that's good for them. But when we spend the majority of our time in that parent role, we're not cultivating the relationship, we're not cultivating closeness.
Mhm.
And so it's really about looking at the interactions that we're having with our kids and
Mhm.
trying to spend more time in that mom-dad role
Mhm.
versus the parent role.
That never goes away. It's
Mm-mm.
time with your kids, isn't it? It really is time with your kids. And in our society today, they're going a million miles an hour.
Mm.
Yeah. But what are some of the tips that, for example, because I have an 11-year-old and I know that I'm like, hey, why don't you turn off that game and let's do something together, watch a movie, play a game. And, couple minutes go by, crickets, because he's busy doing something else. And how do you do that? How do you get them to participate when they're being pulled to go do something else?
Yeah,
And
good one.
it's a great question because I know everyone is so busy. Parents are busy, kids are busy. I think it's about sitting down with your kid and telling them what you really want.
Mm.
Of like, I want us to have more time together doing fun things and getting off screens or taking a break from homework or extracurricular
Mhm.
activities. What are some things that you want to do? What would you want to do?
Mhm.
And give them some reins in, the decisions of some of the activities that they wanna do. But a parent coming to a teenager and saying, "This is really important to me because you're important to me, and we need more quality time and quantity
Yeah.
of time spent together. Let's work on this together. What can we do?"
That's cool because it shows the vulnerability that you mentioned in the last chapter and, transparency. And I don't know if it's too soon to jump to that question, but, talk about that because that is such a
As a
vulnerable
parent,
thing as a parent.
that's so hard. I
I wanna
mean,
spend time with you. They might
yeah,
be like,
I wanna be with
"Dude."
you.
Yeah.
You're important to
Yeah.
me. What can we do
Yeah.
together?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean,
Seems so
they are
simple.
working on, finding their peers and all of that. I'm not trying to take away from the time they spend with their peers because that's really important, but pockets of time with the parent is really important. Parents are still the most influential person in their kids' lives,
Boom.
and I think parents think it's their peers, but it's not. It's
Mhm. The CDC will confirm that with the
Yep,
surveys. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So, I mean, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey shows that they really want to hear from us and consider us the experts. But if that door's not open and that relationship hasn't been cultivated, they're certainly not going to turn to us if they have a question, whether it's about a relationship they're in, about going to a party, not knowing how to navigate the drugs and alcohol, or any of those things that are harder conversations.
And when you talk about those gaps
Oh yeah, good one.
of like your 11-year-old and your 20-year-old even, because I have a almost 20-year-old and an 11-year-old, and I felt like it was a little bit easier to do stuff with her because there wasn't all this technology or there wasn't all these things going on that were like distractors. But now, how has that changed? How have you seen that evolve and change for, like, in your case, for parenting?
Mhm. Good one.
There's so many distractions, screens, of course, but there's also this piece that and maybe you all can speak to this as well. What I see is what we're asking of teenagers has increased, whether it's academics or extracurricular activities
Mm,
or how to get into college.
yes.
We ask so much more from our teenagers now than even a decade ago.
Yeah.
Like, give you an example.
Dang.
My 15-year-old, or excuse me, my 26-year-old, when she was 15, she played competitive soccer. She was on the top team. They practiced probably an hour and a half, 3 to 4 times a week. Now,
Mm.
hours minimum, plus conditioning 4 or 5 times a week. And so that takes away time at the dinner table with our kids. That takes away they're exhausted, right? So they have less energy to spend with their family. And then if you add, oh, they have to have AP classes and advanced classes and all of, Common App and all the things of trying to get into college, it is a lot. It's a lot.
That's the new gap, huh?
Yeah.
The new growth trend is to keep piling on these kids. So we
It's
have to.
such a shame because we have so many students and kids, friends, my daughter's college age friends that, college isn't made up for them. And the pressure that they went through to find out that it wasn't actually for them, I feel like it's just a waste of time. This generation is just being bombarded by parents. I mean, parents, I don't mean to, it's hard,
Yes. No,
period.
we're all
But
yeah.
we really have done that to this generation.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of why they're so anxious and depressed too. We expect so much. What can we do? If we talk to parents today, we're at a dinner party and parents are always, my friends are always asking, well, how can we do this differently? And I like in your book where you say it's the kids don't always think they're part of the family just because they're part of the family, basically.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to cultivate that.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
we need solid little tips. Okay, I've got a daughter that's playing volleyball. She's full on. What can I do? What's one thing you can do?
Well, I think, there's 2 things right there because you were talking about belonging, and I'd love to talk about that. But what can we do is we really need to figure out what the balance is.
Mm.
We need to be sitting down with our kids, talking to them about how tired they are. Do they feel stressed? Are they overwhelmed? And looking at what's on their to-do plate.
Mm.
We still need to have kids do chores because that's good for them, right? Academics is super important, and exercising every day is also important. Like,
Mm.
I'll give an example. My 11-year-old has swim. She goes 4 times a week for an hour and a half to swim. And then they have extra stuff, conditioning, weight training, all of that. She's 11. And so say no. She
Say no.
Just say
I
no.
I think the coach may not be happy with me, but she's 11,
Good for
and
you.
so she's already doing enough, and we have that conversation together. Like, What tell me, is this too much on your plate? I'm not gonna pile on more.
That's nice for the parent to be the ally there and to be the advocate with the kid, because we're such a culture of competition. So to have that culture shift into more of the relationship and connection is really cool.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
have to be brave enough to do it.
You do, as a parent.
As a
do.
parent.
Yeah.
As a parent.
Yeah.
And I'm
You
sure you
really
you must
do.
see a lot of that. It's just the kids
Yeah,
get into a routine, the parents don't say anything, we hope it's gonna be okay,
Yeah.
and then it's not.
Stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So much stress. I remember my son, I was going to him, and I think he was 12 at the time, and he played baseball, basketball, golf, and I said to him, I said, "Now, you're this age, you're 12, and if you wanna get really good at a sport, you have to pick one,
Oh.
or you don't have to,
Yeah.
and you cannot be the best person on the team." And he goes, "I like all 3 of them, and so
Wow.
I'm fine with not being the best person on the team.
That's
I'm having
great.
a great time." And I was like, "Sounds great to me."
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, parents, I feel like the parents to parent pressure is highly accountable here. Like, there's so much need for us to feel somehow. I say us, and I'm using that as like people our age that are parenting, somehow that we have to prove something. Like, our kids are not extensions of our success, right?
Right.
Reminder to
It's
parents.
true. It
Yeah.
it is very true, and I think sometimes parents feel like I'm not giving my kid every opportunity that I could, and so I should do the conditioning. I
Right.
should do the
You're
extra
cheating her of her possible potential, said
right.
some parent that we're not going to name. No.
Was that me? Did I say
No, it
that? I
wasn't
feel
you,
like I
Jamie.
did that with my 24-year-old. That was a mistake I made parenting. I
Aw.
feel like that was one of those parenting 101s at that time. But you have so much potential. The
And
therapist said to me, "Don't ever say that to him again." Like, okay.
wow, good one.
That was worth the hour,
That
the
was worth
$300.
it.
Well, there's so much pressure. I mean, my 11-year-old, he's now gotten into football and he
Mhm.
got into it late. And you go to these games and these kids, like, they have private trainers. They have, like what you're saying, they have all these other sources outside. We don't. And so I asked my son because I feel bad because I'm like, man, I feel like these kids there's so much more ahead of him. And he kind of got upset with me. Like, I'll prove myself on my own. Like,
Ooh, of course
let
Colin would say
me,
that, yeah, yeah.
let me do this
That's
my
cool.
way, like, but it's just a lot of pressure. But you know what? I realized the pressure was me. It's on me.
Mm,
It doesn't bother him.
Mhm.
So I need to step away.
good one.
So, Susan, what's your
Yeah.
advice to a parent when you hear that kind of thing? You're dealing with the teens and the parents, and they're saying, "I'm piling on too much.
Mhm.
It's just too much."
Yeah,
So,
yeah, what do I do?
how do we back off
I
once
think
it's already
a
there?
lot of it a lot of it is also, like, the anxiety for the parent, and I think a lot of parents do have anxiety, they want to be a good parent, they wanna maybe parent differently than they were parented, they wanna give their kid every opportunity that they can, and so they get a little anxious and
Mm,
do lots of things, like the conditioning and all of those things that they need to do, and just because we're not giving them every single opportunity doesn't mean we're a bad parent.
mhm,
And I think that's a fear of that we're a bad parent.
mm. Could you say something? I know we might be coming closer to where we need to wrap, but can you say something about the transparency and vulnerability struggle and how that plays into trying to overcome some of the things we just talked about, like the parents owning, how do I create a better, closer connection with my kid? And then tell us about the two things, the vulnerability and transparency.
Yeah. So I do want parents to know that they're not expected to be perfect. That's not the goal in parenting. And I think parenting is really about building a relationship with your child
Mm,
and that close connection. So you can have open dialogue and there's an ease to the relationship.
mhm.
It's really about how your kids feel when they're around you. That's what's so important.
Nice. Mhm.
And so I think that we talk a lot about vulnerability, and I think that word is actually overused a little bit.
You said that in the book, and I know. I was like, we know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And so I see vulnerability as a stepping stone to emotional transparency.
Ooh.
And so emotional transparency is the goal. We want our kids to have ease to be able to come to us and talk to us. And so vulnerability implies risk. Risk of the other person's reaction, risk of sharing because of judgment, shame, criticalness. And so if we look again at the goal is emotional transparency, when we sense our kid is hesitating, that's when they're feeling vulnerable. And so for a parent to lean in and reassure, yes, this is another thing you can talk to me about. I am approachable on this topic too. And the more that you do that, the more it just becomes second nature at home, that we're talking about how we're feeling. We're more open. I can go and say, you know what? Or my kid can say, I got a D on that test. And okay, let's sit down and talk about what happened. What do you need more support? Or, whatever it is that they're struggling with, they're more likely to reach out to you when they know they're not afraid of your reaction.
And Susan, do you feel like that's part of really reinforcing that as they're younger? Like, this is a difficult situation, or this has got to be difficult to talk about. That's hard. Ooh, that sucks. But keep talking. I wonder if I certainly didn't do that enough with my kids. I wish that I would have with the older ones.
But we can still do it. A part of the book was it's never too late.
I know. I like that you said that. Are you sure
Yeah.
it's not too late? I have a 36-year-old. He's doing pretty good, though.
Never too late. No, never
That's
too late.
awesome.
What's the biggest issue you see going forward with parenting right now? I know that's kind of a big question, but there's so many things up. Now that we've got schools around the world that are not allowing phones in there, and things are changing a little bit with the way that parents are actually communicating with their kids.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is disconnection. I think we're very disconnected. And as I said before, we're not having time at the dinner table with our kids because everyone is so busy. They have their own schedules. And so we need to come together as a family more.
God, it's just so simple. It goes back to time. I love this last one of the lines in the book, Kathleen. I'm gonna because you
She commandeered my text.
I did.
I know.
I
love
know.
hard
I'm on
copies
Kindle.
too.
Asking your kids this. I'm gonna do this.
Oh, I love this.
What is your experience in your relationship with me? Ask your teen that.
That is
What
cool.
kind of answers have you heard that kids actually say to their parents? I'm so curious about that. Oh gosh, what am I going to say? I'm going to be like, wait, I need a glass of wine. Hold on.
I mean, so many different answers to that question. And I think that we as parents really do need to ask that question to our kids. So we really get a picture of what their experience is in their relationship with us and in their home environment. It's really about what's the atmosphere at home. Is it feel safe and loving? Can they actually relax? Can they be themselves? It's huge. I have so many kids say, I'm a different person at home and a different person at school. And I'm confused as to which one I am.
That's tough. Talk about energy being used in the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
Or not wrong, but not a very
Right.
productive.
I also have to say something super funny. That question, I have to tell you, well, I asked my husband first, and he turned and he looked at me like, what are you kidding?
What's your experience?
What's wrong with you?
Then we went to a CU Buffs tailgate party, and I just thought I'd just ask a bunch of people that question, and everyone just stopped in their tracks, and they're like, "Oh my god, that's a really great question."
See?
Okay, maybe this can be a party question.
Yeah.
Right.
For adults.
For adults.
Right.
Maybe it should be in our
Right.
Our
Oh,
jar.
our question.
Our
By the
jar.
way, I hope you're okay with this. We didn't warn you. We have a question jar.
Should we pull
Do you mind if we pull and go?
Sure.
a random
Okay.
questions?
I want you to wrap with a couple things that we can really take away, but this is just fun.
Yeah.
Parenting is so hard and so serious lately. I feel like the world has been so heavy and there's just a lot. We need to find joy in this too and really hold on to that.
Joy.
Joy.
Okay, this one is, do you ever get the feeling that managing teens at home has made you a better negotiator at work? I'd like to say that, or I'd like to say that work or in your, like, romantic relationship. Or is it the other way around? Have you become worse at negotiating? So do you ever get the feeling that managing teens at home has made you a better negotiator?
Oh, for sure.
I
Yeah,
know.
definitely. Oh my gosh.
Right?
I do have to say, like, the biggest part of parenting also is just listening. And so when you listen with the intent to understand, oh my gosh, it's so amazing what you hear. If you can just be patient and listen, and you learn so much from teenagers.
So funny, so
Can we
true.
hang on that for a
That
minute?
right there.
Just listening with
Listen.
intent. That
Yeah.
goes back to, Stephen Covey, right?
Oh,
Seek first to understand
understand.
before trying to be
Yeah.
understood.
I know.
If only we could do that.
All
We
over
can
the
do it.
world, including
Everywhere. Stop talking.
Yes, we won't talk about politics, but
I
absolutely.
know. Do you wanna leave us with that one, Susan?
That's a pretty good
Or is there
takeaway.
there's so much. I'm just gonna say this book is great. It's not
Yes.
as I started, there's a lot of parenting books out there. I feel like really building those lifelong relationships with family is so important because now I have older kids now and a grandson, and it remains at the very forefront of
Mm.
what's most important in our world, and that's our family.
Oh,
The
yeah.
people that we really love.
Our tribe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. Well, I hope that people feel my compassion in the book for how hard it is to be a parent, and especially if they didn't have the best childhood growing up, it can make it even more difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And, I do hope that they know that even the smallest shifts can make the biggest change in your relationship. Hugging your kid, greeting them at the door with a "Hello, I missed you." Even small
Mm.
things like that, creating that
Mhm.
belonging is just huge,
Mm.
and it's never too late.
Aw.
I love it. That's a
So
wonderful way to
good. It
wrap.
makes me wanna
Thank
get
you for
home.
taking the time. We know you're on a crazy book route with this, and we wish you all the luck, and we wanna have you back because it wasn't enough time.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
I
you
would
so
love to.
much.
I'd love to.
thank
Thank you,
you,
ladies.
Susan.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.